A warm welcome to the Virtual Future of Food and AgTech Summit 2022. I am your MC, Anita Avumega. We are excited to be able to bring together some of the leading thought leaders, OC Farms Africa, CSIR Crops, Food for All Africa, Partners in Food Solutions, Upfield, Legendary Foods, Ground Up Ghana, E2JDJVC, Gersel Ghana, and CQ Legal and Consulting to share their valuable thoughts with us on the way forward for transformational food systems. The Future of Food and AgTech Summit is produced by Industry Today Africa and powered by Evoke Experientials. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Prince Moses Oforiatta, General Manager at Asase Broadcasting Company Limited and Chair of the Advisory Board of Future of Food and AgTech Summit 2022. Prince Moses.
Hi, if you can hear me, I think I'm having internet connection problems. Thank you very much, Anita, and welcome to all of you. Thank you, William Adam, for making this happen. I will power on with my presentation this morning, and so thank you very much. Thank you to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. I will begin with a short submission on why we're here today and the philosophy underpinning the Future of Food AgTech 2022. So a growing global population and changing diets are driving up the demand for food, and production is struggling to keep up. What with crop yields leveling off in many parts of the world, ocean health declining, and natural resources, including soils, water, and biodiversity, have been stretched dangerously thin. A 2020 report found that nearly 690 million people, or 8.9% of the global population, are hungry. And that is up by nearly 60 million in only 5 years. And so the food security challenge will only become more difficult, and the world will need to produce about 70% more food by 2050 to feed an estimated 9 billion people. The challenge is intensified by agriculture's extreme vulnerability to climate change, and its negative impacts are already being felt. That is increasing temperatures, weather variability, shifting agro-ecosystem boundaries, invasive crops and pests. I'm sure a lot of you heard about the invasive locusts across East Africa some time back, and more frequent extreme weather patterns. It is reducing crop yields and lowering livestock productivity. The problem also works in reverse. Agriculture is part of the climate conundrum. Listen carefully now. It is understood that it currently generates about 19 to 29% of total greenhouse emissions. Also, a third of food produced globally is either lost or wasted. Addressing food loss and waste is therefore critical to helping meet climate goals and reducing stress on the environment. Today, in our world today, governments have got the jitters, and they are wondering when the Russo-Ukraine war will end, if ever. And so the effects are felt across Africa, with Ghana, Senegal, Uganda, and Nigeria ranking top 4 in that order in food price hikes, all above 100%. Since January this year. And so climate change, population growth, financial crises, health crisis, inflation, cost of living, vested interest in both public and private sectors, real politic in crisis times, as it were, etc., speak to the doom and gloom narrative characterizing the world economy today. Substantial investments in adaptation will be required to maintain current yields and to achieve an increase in food production and quality to meet demand. This is where the Future of Food AgTech comes in. And there couldn't be a better time because world food security is of the essence. Some of the questions the advisory board of Future of Food has asked are, how do we transform the agri sector and increase food security? What sort of partnerships should we create for the future of food? Public-private partnerships matter in solving wicked problems. And so looking at the policy environment, how do we empower communities through capacity building and the use of tech to achieve food security? Now, this is an ideas lab. This meeting today is an ideas lab that seeks to unpick and unpack solutions for increased productivity, enhanced resilience, and reduced emissions. So without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to recognize the advisory boards, board members of Future of Food AgTech 2022. And I will begin with the lady, because they say ladies first, isn't it? And that will be Aline Bader, Country Business Head at John Deere. We have Kwabena Amwateng Frimpong, Regional Director from Africa at Ignitia. Chef Elijah Amu Adu, founder of Food for All Africa. Gordon Autry, Country Program Manager at Partners in Food Solutions, and William Adam Amalai, CEO at Evoke Africa Group. I'd also like to recognize the producers of the summit, that is Evoke Experientials and Industry Today Africa. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, I would once again like to thank you all for joining us today on this wonderful platform of incredibly powerful actors of change in the agri sector. Thank you very much. I will go back to Anita. Thank you.
So we move on to the panel session. And on this panel, we have the moderator, Prince Moses. The topic is achieving the triple win of climate smart agriculture. Are our food systems up to the task? Prince?
Thank you very much. And thanks again, Anita. So the topic is achieving the triple win of climate smart agriculture. Are our food systems up to the task? And I will begin with a little a prelude, as it were, talking about climate smart agriculture, perhaps unpacking it a bit for those of us who need a bit of a reminder on what it is. And so climate smart agriculture is an integrated approach to managing landscapes, cropland, livestock, forests, and fisheries that addresses the interlinked challenges of food security and accelerating climate change. Climate smart agriculture, that is CSA, also aims to simultaneously achieve three outcomes. And this we're going to be addressing here today. And the first is increased productivity, as I said earlier, enhance resilience, and reduce emissions. Now, climate smart agriculture is not only about sustainable agriculture, it also has an explicit focus on addressing climate change. It works with knowledge systems, and so it systematically considers the synergies and trade-offs that exist between productivity, adaptation, and mitigation. Finally, very little can be done without funding. And so climate smart agriculture also focuses on funding and investment opportunities. This notwithstanding, making our food and agriculture systems more sustainable will depend on innovative tools, as it were, and approaches being developed and deployed to address the interlinked challenges of food security and accelerating climate change solutions. Now, this panel will deep dive into current innovations in action, impacting increased productivity, enhanced resilience, and reduced emissions at the stages of pre-production and production across the supply chain to the endpoint consumption. And to do this, I've got my panelists here with me, and they are Aline Bader, Country Business Head at John Deere, Kwabena Amwateng Frimpong, Regional Director at Africa at Ignitia, Costas Source, who's CEO at KZO Africa Sea Farms, and Surajit Sinha, who is director at Farmacio. Thank you all, and welcome to this panel.
All right. Thank you, Prince.
All right. So I will begin this. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be directing questions to all of you, one after the other, and you have between 5 and 6 minutes to make your submission, and then there will or not be a follow-up question. I'm going to begin with, I believe, Aline Bader. So adapting to the negative impacts of climate change is a pressing challenge for anyone engaged in the agricultural sector. Smallholder farmers are particularly vulnerable to these changes, such as erratic weather patterns, increased weather shortages, short growing seasons, and changes in plant and animal diseases and agricultural pests. As a result of these challenges, water availability and soil quality matter. You know, they're also on the decline. The knowledge and skills that help farmers protect themselves against these changes are imperative. And so my question to you, Aline Bader, is, we know that climate change is impacting agriculture all over Africa, particularly in Ghana. Can you explain, Aline, some of the ways that you have personally seen agriculture and the environment impacted? If you can throw in a couple of case studies, we love stories. We would really, really appreciate that. Please, Aline. We will go to the next person, and that is going to be Mr. Kwabna Mwateng Frimpong. I'll go back to Aline with the same question. Yeah, and to Mr. Frimpong, the question is, how does climate smart agriculture benefit smallholder farmers?
All right, thanks, Prince, for the question, and also good morning. And I think others are also coming from other places, so just to greet everyone, and thanks for making time to be with us today. And I think I was really happy when I looked through the audience we have today, and I saw one of my friends back in school in Germany, in Kululeku, in Pofo from Zimbabwe. So it's really good that a future of food and AgTech Summit is bringing us to get to see people that we knew in the past. Right, just to address the question that you posed, I would like to give more, a little bit information regarding climate smart agriculture. I think the definition or what the term is, which you really explained, was really a good one, but I wanted to add a little bit on that, which I think is very key to this discussion that we have, and that is climate smart agriculture also supporting and enhancing the achievement of national food security and development goals, right? Because I think we are within the scope where just increasing agricultural productivity by increasing the land size under cultivating, then also has a great impact on the greenhouse gases that we're talking about. So I think it is something that is really good and supporting on that. In terms of how it's really benefiting smallholder agriculture, I will want to take it from the first point, which I think it's how climate smart agriculture is helping build climate resiliency among smallholder farmers, right? I think we all know that climate change is real, whether we like it or not. It's been here, and I'm sure taking it from even Ghanaians here, we all know June, July is when we are expecting rains, but here we are in October and it's really, really raining, which didn't used to be in the past. So having some climate smart agricultural technologies or adaptation strategies do help smallholder farmers to build climate resilience and also support them in addressing climate change. This is very key to support also in tackling the essential questions of agricultural productivity, because in order to really feed the growing population, there is the need to improve upon the agricultural production, which more or less needs to be intensified. But that doesn't necessarily mean we have to cultivate more land. but how we can take advantage of the maximum yield out of the land that is already under cultivation so that we can help and not tear up more carbon-rich forests like what we've seen, but rather to promote more of afforestation and also just increasing um, productivity on the land that we cultivate. And I think this is one of the benefits that climate smart agriculture strategies or practices, if smallholder farmers adapt, is also bringing to them. One last point I want to also bring onto this is for some climate smart adaptation strategies or practices, such as, for example, mulching, which we all know is about using cover crops to cover the soil, also going into crop diversification, and also using the high quality of seeds and planting materials that are adapted to maybe stress and also drought. I think it's also helping to increase soil health and also the efficient management of water, which in the long run helps to improve the yields, and automatically that will help also increase or reduce the cost of inputs such as fertilizer and water. I think in your earlier submission, we all heard of the Russian-Ukraine war, and we all know how it is impacting on the cost of production, especially how there's price hikes in fertilizer. So adapting some adaptation strategies regarding climate smart agriculture for me is a way to go, and that's how it can also benefit smallholder farmers. Thank you.
Right. Kwabena or Mr. Frimpong, let's go on first name basis here, Kwabena. You're talking about increasing yields without necessarily using more land. And
Right.
I also understand from my research notes that only 5% globally of extra available land, that is arable land, can be cultivated between now and 2050, when the world population is supposed to explode by about 40% from what we have now. And so it's going to be a lot. And you're talking about smart solutions that are needed. And so you're talking about enhanced seeds, but is that all? What about technology?
Right. Technology is also very key in this space. I think when Aline joins, I'm sure she will be even talking more about agric mechanization from the perspective of what John Deere is also doing. I think in terms of other bits of technology, there are also digital services that are really being supported. And just to give an example, that is what at Ignitia, what we're trying to do to support smallholder farmers. So what we are doing is we are using remote sensing, machine learning, and artificial intelligence to provide accurate tropical weather forecasts to support smallholder farmers and give weather forecast and climate smart advices to smallholder farmers in this case. We all know, for example, in Ghana and elsewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, the moment there is that rainfall, the heavy one, just right after, you go to the houses of farmers and you might not see them because they've all gone to the field to plant. But right after planting, there might not be any more rains to sustain the growth of the seeds that were put in the soil. So what we're trying to do and using technologies is to predict how can we predict the appropriate planting date, for example, for farmers, so that when they sow the seed, there will be enough rainfall throughout the growing season for the plants so that the higher yields that we all opt for can happen without necessarily cultivating more land, just as you said. Other things that we have seen over and over again being wasted is fertilizers and even spray chemicals. And these are all things that are weather based because everyone here, or even not, if you don't have an agriculture background, has that information or know a bit about that in case you want to apply fertilizer, there should be a little bit of moisture in the soil and there shouldn't be any heavy rain to cause runoff. So what we are using technology to do is if you get to know that these weather parameters are not favoring the application of fertilizer, then we can prompt farmers that due to A, B, and C, or these weather conditions is not favorable. So do not do this kind of activities at this point in time so as to save your time, your money, and also the scarce resources in general that they have, which is also labor, when they have to hire labor to apply fertilizer or spray chemicals. So technology is really playing a role both as digital services and also other forms of mechanization, and even coming up with this improved seeds and other ways through which smallholder farmers can work. So I think technology is key and currently doing quite a lot in terms of supporting smallholder farmers for climate smart agriculture. Thank you.
All right, so Kwabena, you have spoken extensively about predictions or early warning systems, as it were. I also do understand that it's not a one-size-fits-all technology when it comes to early warning systems, because we live in various parts of the world with various climatic conditions.
Right.
Now, looking at the early warning systems that you are, or the innovative early warning systems that you and your team have been designing, what specifically would you say has worked for West Africa? Because we basically have the same weather conditions, and I would imagine similar soil qualities. Excuse me if I'm wrong. So what are some of the specific innovations that you've come up with?
Right. So just to give this in the perspective of West Africa, maybe as part of knowledge sharing for all of us here, West Africa is one of the areas in the world that it is very, very difficult to predict weather, even within the tropics, because the atmosphere is really chaos and it changes just so quickly. So it's been found that just the ground station data is not enough. That's why we are using more of satellite data and also improving it with machine learning. So across that, we have come up to know that there are different actors within the value chain that will need this kind of information to do that. So one key thing that we have done, or the products that we've done across West Africa, and the key thing is our information or weather information we provide is location specific, right? So what is going to happen here, as you said, for example, even in East Legon will be different from what is going to happen somewhere in Achimota. So we get the coordinates so that we can give hyper-local information, which is within a resolution of 3 kilometer radius, so that we can really be able to predict accuracy within that. And we do give this rainfall forecast and other products that we also give. As I earlier said, it's also on the climate smart advisories, which is largely based and used for farmers to come up with the right practices that they have to use on the field. We also know there are also other technology companies that need weather parameters for their like crop insurance, right? They really need weather data to be able to come up with some parameters for them to insure farmers. We also know people into soil data analysis also need some information from the weather. So what we have done in the past is also to come up with a product where different tech companies can plug into our system via APIs, and they can get this weather data to feed their systems and come up with different products that they can use to serve other farms. One thing that has also been key on our radar now is how do we give or commercialize flood alerts, right? We all know it's something that we all see as a public good, where we expect, for example, the meteorological agency to be giving this national information to people when there's a flood alert. So how are we also trying to collaborate with the Met agencies within the countries that we are working with in West Africa to come up with this product, which has been validated? Then we can then give to the public. So we still keep going on and trying to see how we can work more on public-private partnerships so that we can see where the synergies are and then support the public sector with the technologies that we have developed and using to do the current accuracy that we do. So just for the records, we are currently doing twice as accurate predictions as the global models. When I say global models, these are typically the forecast that we see on our mobile phones. you can be checking and realize that, oh, it's going to rain, but it will never rain or something of that sort because it has a wetness bias. So we are currently doing around the tropics around 84% accuracy compared to global models that are doing something around 36. And the main reason being that global models are largely optimized for the temperate zones, and they don't do much work within the tropics to be able to bring about the accuracy. Thanks so much.
All right, Kobna, thank you very much. If we have some time, I'll come back to you to, since this is an ideas lab and solutions matter over here, perhaps talk about how governments, the concrete steps government can take in the area of smart agriculture. So we go now to Surajit and Kostas. I'm sorry for keeping you waiting, but my first question goes to Surajit. And I'd like to know what the benefits and costs if West African countries are to invest in climate smart agriculture. If you can help us wrap our heads around the benefits and costs, because we know that with the costs, we're not only talking about funding, we're also talking about other things. So if you can help us wrap our heads around this question. All right, we will go to Kostas. I believe Surajit is not in. So Kostas, are you there?
I am there.
Okay, we'll go back to Surajit and to Aline. But they say the fewer the merrier. Don't tell them I said this. But we have more time to delve deeper into or dive deeper into a lot of things, Kostas. So increased pollution over exploitation, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. We call it IUU. And climate change have become major threats to the livelihood of millions of people who rely on the marine and freshwater ecosystems for food and income. Increased efforts and interventions are needed to conserve and sustainably use ocean resources. We have also seen some challenges in the governance structures underpinning fishing around the world. Your company, KZO, Sea Farms Africa, KSFA, if that is what it is undertaking a pilot project in the Republic of Gabon that would de-risk the development of a commercial sea plant and shellfish industry and serve as the showcase for scaling to other 37 African coastal nations. Now, the question here to you, Kostas, is I'd like you to give us an overview of how the biodiversity of coastal ecosystems have changed and why should people care about marine ecosystems at all?
Yeah. It's a very large and impossible question to answer, but thank you first for having me here and for allowing me to also listen to what's happened so far, because it is all about we're all linked, the sea and the land and your fantastic continent, which has it all, to be honest, which has it all. So and I'm here as a visitor, but I want to be part of what I believe is, as your colleagues mentioned at the beginning, it's not all doom and gloom. It's actually, the key is to turn it to an opportunity, because it's an opportunity now. It's still not too late to wake up with practical, pragmatic solutions. So going back and the huge leaps in technology. Now coming to the question, obviously, as the populations and countries in your continent, but globally, as they increase, as they develop, there'll be impact on the marine environment, right? Direct, firstly, by human activity, simply fishing, like you said, both illegal and legal, even oil and gas exploration. I mean, here in Gabon, for example, when I've been to the oil ministry, they show the whole sea and they say it's all up for grabs. But you go to the Environment Agency and they say we protected a quarter of it. So there's a lot of, I wouldn't say confusion, but there's a lot of overlap. And that's also, particularly in the case of fisheries, a political question as well. Everybody trying to fight for their own turf, right? So going to biodiversity, we don't really know, I mean, the impact on the biodiversity, because biodiversity obviously evolves with changing conditions. So you're just replacing what might have been an endemic natural species with something else. And species will adapt, some species will go, others will come back. The fact is, the environment and nature will always, one second, will always find a way of coming back. So we have the direct activity, then you have indirect activity that can be pollution, extreme effluence, you know, a lot of criticism given to, you know, to agricultural outflow, you know, into lakes and ponds, unjustly in many cases. And then things like clearing mangroves, you know, human growth. So the sea in the end, you know, so biodiversity obviously is on the down, but at the same time, we have to keep in mind that it's an evolution. So there's just a replacement with other species that might not have been there. So why we should care about the sea is that it's the last frontier. I mean, we know more about space, outer space, than we do about our seas, right? And the sea is a dynamic link in the whole ecosystem, with all the heat transfers and therefore vapors. So I mean, it's an intrinsic link that will impact, you know, agriculture will impact, you know, we see that in El Nino, you know, down off the west coast of South America. So I mean, we don't know enough, right? We don't know enough, but we do know that it plays a large part, and we do know that it's the environment that we know the least about. Right? So the first steps that have been taken, you know, to kind of deal with this are very simple, you know, because we live in a polarized system, are just, you know, creation of marine parks, you know, and more monitoring of illegal fishing activities. So let's say an extreme approach, which is always the start. You always need to have a polarized situation at the beginning in order to come to an equilibrium. And that's a bit where we, you know, where we come in, because I've seen all sides of the playing field, let's say, and therefore it's very important in order to tackle these issues to find a way, in fact, to include people from the local level going up to influence then the political level, but not just by banning everything and stopping everyone, but creating a new activity that can farm the sea, essentially. So that's why I'm very happy that we're here on your panel, because it's all about technology in the end, and everybody will always look here as to other countries and think, you know, artisanal farmers and you know, it's good and it's that, but there's all this technology out there that you can apply to a virgin, pristine environment and actually go a lot further, and also educate people to these new technologies. So a lot of people have resistance to new technology because they think they won't have a job, or there'll be no work for them. But in fact, they'll be specialized. They'll learn these specialized skills that will increase productivity, and that will make them very useful and useful, right? Make them very, let's say, marketable, and actually increase chances of getting a job. Because I look at your continent as a whole, and in fact, the world as a whole. So that's what we're involved with here with KCO. We took this inclusive approach to try, on the one hand, to combat climate change, because we're looking at growing sea plants in the sea, which absorb up to 40 times more carbon, by involving the local communities and providing them jobs and highly specialized skill sets. And then we want to roll this out to the other 37 countries, making the coastal countries in Africa. And why this is of interest, I come back to a point made at the beginning on the food security. I made some calculations which I can share afterwards with yourselves, but as to the, let's say, carrying capacity of the sea for nutrition. And the numbers are unbelievable, right, when you look at them. I took a calculation of the projected populations of the coastal African countries for 2050, which is in fact almost double, as you've stated, as well as your colleague, of what it is now. I think from 900 million to come to around 1.8, 1.7, 1.8 billion people by 2050. And I calculated the nutritional value of the sea plants that can be grown in the coastal waters, with less than 10% of not even the exclusive economic zones, with a combined 10% of the continental shelf being farmed, you could actually feed all the populations of the countries and have the nutrients needed for survival. So that was on a base of calories and then proteins that I did the calculation on. So I mean, the solution's there, but I don't see people eating sea plants overnight. But what's nice with sea plants is that there's a lot of role into agriculture and the use of the circular economy, which I think we can elaborate on afterwards. But this is where we're at, and this is why I'm very interested to hear more also about the agricultural technologies that we're brainstorming here, because it's all linked. And that's the fundamental answer to the question. I mean, why we should care about the marine ecosystem is just as important as the terrestrial ecosystem and the atmospheric ecosystem. And it's all part of one.
Right. So you're talking about solutions, coasters.
Yes.
We know that Asian foods sometimes have seaweed, and we all love it. Yes. When we do our Japanese restaurants. We love it. We love it. And so
when it's not too expensive. When it's not too expensive, right? It's very expensive.
We've also seen case studies involving Indonesia and Malaysia, where they actually changed the palate of entire populations from peanut oil to oil palm. You know, so this is possible, and it has to do with policies, because you can't just out of the blue, as a private company or as just an organization, decide to go on a sensitization spree, expecting people to just change their palates or their culinary cultures.
Seaweed hamburgers. Yes.
Yes. And so I would ask, my question is, have you been working with governments on these biodiversity or opportunities in the area of food, where we will see ourselves not all rushing for the little that is left, but also looking at the...
Yes, you're back now.
All right.
I got what you're saying, and I think, yes, I mean,
I think you've frozen again. So new solutions in food, where we help populations across the 37 countries discover new food, rather than, you know, all of us depending on the little food that is left within the biodiversity ecosystem.
Yes. Yes, there's two approaches. One is obviously increasing policies are policies. And I think, as we all know, in the world of today, there could be conversations going on endlessly. We found that the main interest on growing plants and stuff has been from a carbon sequestration perspective for combating climate change. And otherwise, I mean, the existing production of sea plants mainly on East Africa side, Tanzania being the leaders, is going into the carrageenan market in Asia, which is fine. It goes as a food additive and a supplement, but it's a subsidized market in a sense. We believe that there's a much better market out there for food, both on the export market and also locally. Locally, because taste, as you said, you know, not maybe, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. It's really a question of marketing. We've toyed with the idea of sea plant noodles because you can create a flour. You can create a flour from the algae. But I personally believe with manioc and cassava root, you already have a golden, you know, you have the solution there. I mean, it's a dream, a dream product, the cassava root. So I mean, all the solutions are there. So I think in the end, policies are important, but I really am a big believer of engaging with local communities, and that's not just the stereotyped local community, but the universities, educational institutions, basically informing the next generation that there are these options on the table and this activity to be involved in. So I think education. I would prioritize education over anything else, because that will influence the policies. And obviously stimulating the private sector, because we know that the government sector, however challenging it is for them, so I mean, I respect them for it. It's not easy. It takes a lot longer and much more laborious. So the key is in the private sector. The key is international funding, of which there's a lot of funding out there, and to bring in the technology, right, and include all the expertise at one side, but include also all the education institutions locally to create these skill sets. Going back also to the other question, I mean, rather than just the direct approach, of eating sea plants, latest research is showing its increasing importance in terms of as its biomass and juice, let's say, for soil amendment and as a biofertilizer. Which is raises the next question, not next question, but the next approach is that it can work hand in hand with agriculture as well. And I think the other key we should also be focusing on is, I mean, at least I've kind of stumbled across, is the importance of a circular economy. So while you might not be eating your sea plant, straight out of the sea on a plate with the sushi, it could actually go to nourish the earth that will have a really strong crop of product, and make a country or certain countries autonomous from having to import expensive fertilizers or difficult to source fertilizers because of supply disruptions, and also reduce both carbon footprints, but also have a much better, results have been very, very quite conclusive, I've been told, and it's quite species specific, and we don't know enough yet. So a lot of our actual pilot project is aimed at the R&D side to actually get proper data, and that's why we're not focused only on Gabon. Gabon just happened because I'm here, and because there isn't so much of a culture at the sea. There's not so much sea-based activities. But we mentioned the 37 other countries because, in fact, it's anybody can do it in parallel as well. It's not, it's like agriculture. Everybody should be doing some, but I'd be happy to share the numbers about the nutritional values, because I was astounded when I saw for such a small space to be used, that there was so much nutrient potential there, which can also be indirect, as I said, into the earth as a fertilizer. So we're not there just to, champion the sea. It's about understanding the links between everything and working together and including as many people as possible. Because going to the climate change question, I definitely live it here. You can go out to a village and they don't understand what carbon credits mean and why they should protect the elephants. They want a job at the end of the day, and they need a plate of food on their table. And that also answers the illegal fishing question. Somebody will be forced to do something to survive. So they think, unless you give them the options to have an upstanding career, right? That's what that's what we wanted to achieve, and that's why I think inclusion is very, very important at all levels, and also gender equality, and so yes, that's
right.
In short.
All right. So Costas, thank you very much. So I understand the importance of education to educating cultures that are survivalist as a result of the lack of economic empowerment, and so would sort of adversely understand that circular economy is one of the core switches of net is unstable, so I'll go back. I also understand that circular economy is, we should be back to you in a few minutes, but let's go back to Kobina. Kobina, I'm going to ask you the question I asked Alim before I come to the private public partnerships that we could forge to ensure some sort of solutions in that space. So the question I asked is impacting agriculture all over the continent, particularly here in our country, Ghana. Can you explain some of the ways that you have personally seen agriculture and the environment impacted with real case studies? If you could tell us a story or two, Kobina.
Right. So, just because of time, I would like to talk about one typical scenario or something that happened. So, one key one I want to share is about some flooding some farmers that we were working with experience in the time past before they got our services. So, what happened was they really did a lot of investment, and right after fertilizer application, there was a very heavy rain, which they didn't know what's and how it caused that to happen. And all their fields got submerged, right? And at that point, there was really nothing that they could do. And what they said was if they knew that there was going to be that heavy rain, they wouldn't have spent that much in applying the fertilizer that they have used that had gone waste. So I think giving such information has then would have helped them to know that okay, there's going to be this heavy rain. It can also cause flooding, so that they wouldn't have more or less wasted that scarce resources that they use at that point in time. There was also one other typical scenario where, for example, nobody really expects heavy rains to be happening somewhere November, December. So this was when some farmers were drying their grains that they had, and because of inadequate storage facilities, we see most farmers drying it in the open air, right? So these farmers were hooked onto our service. So they had received information that there's going to be heavy rains at that time. So they didn't take it out. So what really even made us know at that point is the agribusiness or the aggregators who were working with these farmers called them to find out, hey, did you really take your grains out there to grade? They said, oh no, we didn't, because we had information from Ignition. And for the agribusiness, that was like the point for them to know that this is the right solution that we need to provide to the farmers that we're working with. And they did some quantification and said if this message hadn't gone to the farmers and they still had taken their grains out there to dry, they could have lost the grain quality up to about 40%. And we all know how a high rejection rate of grains could have caused to the aggregator. So I think these are some of the clear scenarios that I have seen or given the information to make some data-driven decisions corresponding to their agricultural activities. All right.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think we're running out of time, and so I'm going to come back to you, Costas, for a concluding question, as it were. And can you tell us a bit about the current state of the environment and what you see, the developments you see going forward?
Well, I think it's not too late. I think in certain countries, initiatives were taken in time. And I think the environment is incredibly, is able to come back. So, I mean, there is a change. There's a change happening. But as I said at the beginning, it's more it's kind of a polarized debate. So, as you had one extreme that was just exploiting and not caring, now you have the other extreme that just wants to stop everything. So I think you're seeing a natural evolution to a sustainable route in the middle, which we try and you know, follow, because we're realistic that if you stop everybody from fishing, or you stop everyone of making their livelihood, they'll find another way to do it. So it's really a question of awareness. Here in Gabon, of course, the environment is quite pristine. And I think for most African Sea, it's not, you know, the situation isn't as dire as enclosed seas or in the North Sea or the Mediterranean, where they're more enclosed. So there's, you know, there's still a lot, you know, I view it as an opportunity regionally to be an example of how it can work. So I say that the future is bright, because if we just preach doom and gloom, we'll never get anywhere, right? So
Right.
the future is bright, and it all starts from education and including everyone. Even now, on a more let's say on a larger topic on of carbon sequestration, carbon credits, there was a very interesting article in the Bahamas of Sao Paulo going to policies, where they're talking about potentially having populations benefit from a country's carbon credit portfolio, which obviously I think is a fantastic step in the right direction, because involving people to feel that they're part of it and can also have some benefit from it will then engage people to act together and not feel that it's just somebody come from outside to stop what they were doing for generations even. So I think there's, you know, it's a combination of policies, education, but I think we can do it, right? And we don't have a choice, right? So I mean,
we don't. We don't. Thank you very much, Costas. Thank you very much, Costas. There is so much I've learned from your submissions, you know, with respect to biofertilizers, and these are things that we should be looking at. Yeah, William Adam, I think we should be looking at biofertilizers next time, and that for me is a real nugget in my discussion with Costas. So we go back to Kwabena for our final question. Kwabena, it's the question that I've been trying to ask you. Look, we're out of time, but I've been given about 3 minutes. And so by the timekeeper, and so we're going to make it short and crisp. What are the concrete steps governments can take to promote climate smart agriculture in West Africa and in Ghana in particular? I mean, we have heard about cassava flour, and we know cassava can grow in some of the most hostile environments. There are other innovative discussions that have been had around some of the new food that we can have. A bit about, you know, what Costas has been talking about when it comes to marine plants. And so I'd like to be able to wrap my head around what government can do to promote climate smart agriculture in West Africa and in Ghana in particular. Kwabena.
Right. So I will try to do this in just 2 different points. The first one I want to talk about is, I think there still needs to be some sensitization of the population and especially farmers about climate change. I think people need to know that it is really real. So there should be the need to adapt, come up with adaptation strategies which farmers then can adapt. And this could then support. So I think through that, people could go into more drought tolerant or stress tolerant varieties, and even go into different crops, or with like what Costas was describing. I think as long as people really get to know that this is the situation, and through adaptation, other crops that people are not even currently cultivating, it's something that could be looked at as a form of adapting to climate change. The next thing is, I think there's a clear need to keep promoting ICT in agriculture. That for me is very key. And even looking at currently in Ghana, the extension officer to farmer ratio still is wide, around 1 to 3,000. One extension officer to 3,000 farmers. So that means that there's still a clear need to still let people know about what technology is available for farmers to use, and how digital services is also playing a key role in terms of climate smart agriculture. So this will be my 2 submissions because of time, and thanks so much for the question.
Thank you very much, Kobina, and thank you very much, Costas. So we have been talking about achieving the triple win of climate smart agriculture. Are our food systems up to the task? There is so much we can do, and there is so much to do. We have heard these incredible submissions from these wonderful 2 people, that is Costas and Kwabena. And I have been the moderator for this. My name is Prince Moses Oforiata. I really do hope that we do come back to these topics again next time, especially when we refer to marine fertilizer, or is it biofertilizer? I think that is a wonderful solution to some of these issues we're having with the current geopolitical problems we're facing with the Russia-Ukraine war. So we've been talking to Kostas Haritos, who is CEO of KZO Sea Farms, and Kwabena Amwating Frimpong, who is Regional Director at Africa at Ignatia. And thank you very much. We go back to you,
Thank
Anita.
you.
I could steal 3 minutes of your time as I did warn.
Thank you
Very much.